I'm Tracy Newman, and thank you, I'm gonna sing a song about my bucket list. How many people have one? Kind of, right? Yeah, because y'all seem pretty young, so, you know, but you can still have a bucket list. And maybe you'll recognize yourself here. I worked hard on this. Some folks say before they die they want to run with the bulls. Some want to ride the eye of a hurricane. Some want to live like there's no tomorrow. Then they're strapping on a chute and jumping out of a plane. Well, I'm not looking to push my luck or tempt my fate, to get there early just to stand in line at those pearly gates. And besides having a few more vodka tonics, my bucket list only has one small item upon it. Before I die, I just wanna get one straight answer from you. Some folks say what keeps this old world turning around is everybody having something to look forward to. Like a meal, like a show, like something fantastic. For me, that something is you. Well, I'm not looking to clip your wings or cramp your style. I'm not asking you to buy the cow. Just a simple yes or no, are you coming to dinner? Instead of, do I have to tell you now? Before I die, everybody, I just wanna get one straight answer from you. You love to tell me you love me. That's so easy for you to say. But when I ask, when will you be here? You don't give me the time of day. Oh, if Scarlett Johansson asked you to meet her for coffee, would you give her the same runaround you give me? I'm cursed, 'cause you know you've already got me. So you see no need for common courtesy. Well, I'm not looking to change human nature. Beauty can bring the best of us to our knees. But if you're not scoring tonight with Scarlett Johansson, you might want to give an ETA to me. Before I die, I just want to get one straight answer from you. Just want to get one straight answer from you. How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man?
Following my divorce several years ago, I needed an adventure and settled on the grandest adventure of middle age, to become a whole person, to seek enlightenment and fulfillment, to eat, pray, love. If it was good enough for Julia Roberts, it was good enough for me. This adventure took the form of a fantasy in which I returned to my hometown in New York. There in Millwood, a sparkling hamlet of babbling brooks and colonial homes, I would find my high school crush who didn't know I was alive, living a carefree granola lifestyle, painting in a studio tucked in the woods along the shores of the Hudson River, losing herself in her weekly drum circle, perfecting her fire spinning by night. Together we would storm the East Village in search of ethical vegan cuisine, happy hour quinoa, and chlorophyll smoothies. In her I would find enlightenment, fulfillment, eating, praying, loving. And so I returned home to rekindle the romance with a woman I never knew and become a whole person. Her name was Jeannie Murdoch, a crush that developed senior year of high school as I spotted her in the rafters of the Spring Theater Showcase. She was just so naturally beautiful, with a beautiful and unforced smile, with her feathered haircut, granola style, and dark eyes. Nowadays, Jeannie Murdoch managed the snack bar at the pool of the Whippoorwill Country Club. And as synchronicity would have it, the pool was looking for another hand to work the snack bar. Synchronicity. Things happen for a reason. And so came the day that I would finally meet my high school dream girl, Jeannie Murdoch, and become a whole person. I had a vague memory about the founders of the Whippoorwill Country Club being members of the Friends of New Germany, created around the time of the Third Reich, and that Jews weren't allowed in the club at the time. But that felt like a memory from the 1980s, and having passed before for Italiano, I poo-pooed it. And so I met Jeannie Murdoch. She was granola. She was into painting. She participated in drum circles. She had not yet taken up fire spinning, but she was the sweetest and kindest woman, a thoughtful introvert who exhibited an uncanny connection with nature and still possessed the same charm she had in high school, minus the feathered haircut. She oriented me to the snack bar, asking petty questions like whether I'd worked a grill before or dropped French fries into boiling oil. Of course, I said. I lied. How hard could it be, though, right? I mean, I'd seen it done. After a couple of hours working the snack bar together, Jeannie Murdoch was comfortable enough to entrust it to me as she had to run to a doctor's appointment. Could I hold down the fort for the rest of the day, she asked. I assured her that everything was in good hands. I had a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Cornell University, after all. Running a snack bar, despite the creeping alarm that everyone at the Whippoorwill Country Club had distinctly Aryan features, would be a cakewalk. Jeannie Murdoch was gone 30 seconds when the Hitler Youth decided to break me. The snack bar was poorly designed. The employee entrance at the far end of the snack bar lacked a doorknob, so anyone could walk right in. The counter window was the length of a hearse, so anyone could leap over it. And I suddenly found myself in a game of life-size whack-a-mole as little Kraut commandos barged through the door. I ran over to push them out, then ran back as a second wave leapt through the counter window to raid the candy bars. Where were the parents, the pool supervisor, the lifeguards? For God's sakes, these kids were screaming free candy and teaming over the counter like zombies in World War Z, and there is not an adult anywhere? Doesn't a horde of kids screaming free anything suggest that something is horribly wrong? What could I do? I couldn't toss boiling oil at them, that was out. I was not going to call for help because that would be humiliating, and the counter window faced away from the pool so that no one would hear me anyway. I certainly was not going to leave my post. That would not impress Jeannie Murdoch. I thought then, what would a whole person do? A whole person would remain calm, hand out goodies to the little puppets, and close up shop. I, not being a whole person, did the opposite. I counterattacked. The snack bar faced away from the pool, and had an adult actually looked towards the commotion, he might have seen frozen candy bars flying out from the unseen counter window, followed by napkin holders, salad dressing jars, ketchup bottles, frozen burger patties, ice cream cones, even soda straws that the wind tossed around like a kite dancing in a hurricane. I must have looked like a sweaty octopus pinwheeling his arms, purging the snack bar's inventory. And this worked fine, actually, until a kid hit me square in the forehead with a fucking frozen Good Humor ice cream sandwich. I'm not a violent man. However, when provoked, I can lose myself in a modest rage. My skin turns green, my clothes tear, and I engage in astonishing feats of structure. I leapt across the counter, landing like a Navy SEAL. With surprise in my favor, the little shits had clearly not considered that this middle-aged doofus would come after them, much less actually make it over the counter, and so they froze for a split second, and then scattered every which way like feral cats as I gave chase. The idyllic white supremacist enclave plunged into chaos as a wave of children burst around the side of the snack bar, screaming with the Incredible Hulk in pursuit. I managed to nab one of the kids by his shirt, scoop him up into the air, and threw him in a beautiful arc directly into the pool. Actually, in fact, I was so lost in a rage that I grabbed pretty much anything that was in reach, and most of which were children, and threw them into the pool, not really even noticing that every 6-year-old was running over to me saying, "Me next, me next!" All this just because I wanted to meet my dream girl, Jeannie Murdoch, at the Whippoorwill Country Club and become a whole person. So then these two brutes closed in on me. And I decided if I was going to go down, I would take them with me. I intended to let loose with some deep-throated description of impending physical violence teeming with menace, and instead what came out was something like, "Witness my ultimate form, Nazi fox." Which is when their expression changed from fierce to confused. They raised their hands innocently and said, no, you've got us wrong. The blonde hair, the blue eyes, we're not Nazis. We're Mormons. We're the good guys. I stood there, huffing and puffing and a little bit of embarrassment with my clothes in tatters, a shirt stained with red popsicle juice, and scanned the scene. It was like the firebombing of Dresden. Wounded were strewn everywhere. One boy was crying because his eye got the business end of a frozen Charleston chew. Another clung in fear to his My Little Pony floaty toy. Half-eaten hamburgers and ketchup-smeared paper plates littered the concrete. Shay's lounge was floated in the pool with a smattering of French fries bobbing next to it. Kids were inexplicably hiding behind the legs of slack-jawed parents. And profuse apologies ensued. Not from me, from them, for their unruly children. Everything was set right, and a calm and almost spiritual silence settled in. As I was about to leave, because it seemed like my work there had been done, I turned to one of the Mormon brutes and asked in a quiet and almost shameful voice, "Please, I've come all this way. I just need to know one thing. Is Jeannie Murdoch, is she single?" He looked back at me, an apologetic tear welling in his eye. He rested his hand gently on my shoulder and said, "She's engaged this past February." Somewhere, there's a quantum reality where Jeannie Murdoch and I live together in a cottage by the shores of the Hudson River, where she paints and I write, where we forage vegetables from our garden and cook our vegan meals, where we dazzle Westchester County with our fire spinning, and where we hold hands walking through the scatterings of autumn leaves in the forest beside our house. But that is another reality, where I am a whole person, and where there are no fucking snack bars.
Clouds so swift, rain won't lift, the gate won't close, the railings froze. Get your mind off winter time, you ain't going nowhere. Ooh, you ride me high, tomorrow's the day my man's gonna come.
I'm 5'4" and a snug size, let's say 6. But ever since I was 12 and got my first subscription to Vogue, I wanted to be a model. I loved clothes, fashion, and the idea of dating rock stars. And I wanted to live in that glamorous world. I had a taste of it in high school in the tiny town of Katy, Texas. As a senior, I was second runner-up in the Katy Rice Harvest Festival beauty pageant. My best friends, Cheryl and Kathy, were first runner-up in Queen, and as part of our prize package, all three of us got to model furs on Good Morning Houston. We skipped school for the day, walked the catwalk on local TV, and afterward, the station paid for our lunch at La Hacienda, my favorite Mexican restaurant. I was hooked. As a realistic career choice, modeling might have been a long shot. That year, I wasn't voted most attractive. I won most individual, whatever that means. But I could strike a pose, and my senior class photos came out great. If someone like Eileen Ford could see those, I might have a chance. But I had no idea how to make that happen, so instead of the runway, I went to college. I focused on school and drinking Bartles and James wine coolers and eating a lot of Nachos Belgrande at Taco Bell. My first job out of grad school was assistant to the VP of marketing for a professional basketball team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. It wasn't quite the glam life I had envisioned. One day at work, I was reading the paper, and a full-page ad caught my eye. Become a model today. No experience necessary. The company, Model Search America, promised access to tons of modeling agencies. The ad text was big and bold, and in the middle of the ad were pictures of a regular-looking girl and guy, smiling and modeling. At the bottom, in the biggest font I've ever seen, was a number to call for more information. This could be a sign. Before I could chicken out, I picked up the phone and dialed. It was a recording. It promoted their casting call in Detroit, about 3 hours away by car. The cost was $500. I had a lot of student loan debt. My budget was so tight I had typed up a card that said, if it is not this, do not buy it. Under that was a list of things I could buy, like toilet paper, gasoline, and food. Model Search America was not on that list. I laminated the card and kept it in my wallet to stop me from spending. But the voice on the recording sounded really enthusiastic and stated there was modeling work for all types, including commercial print. I might not be supermodel material, but I could see myself in an ad for American Airlines or Embassy Suites. I come from gullible stock. My grandfather had more entries from Publishers Clearinghouse filed away than income tax returns. He did win a Chevy Beretta and a Sharp microwave, but for the amount of time and money he shelled out on contests, he probably could have bought a Bentley. I knew I had sucker potential, so I was usually wary of scams. I realized this could be one, but looking at the big picture, $500 might be a small price to pay for the chance to live my dream. So any apprehension I felt was overshadowed by the idea that I was this close to living in a kick-ass loft in Soho and clubbing with my new best friend, Naomi Campbell. To participate in the casting call, I needed photos. I had a new boyfriend, John, who took a photography class and had a really great camera. He was cool and artsy, and he shot in black and white, just like fashion photographers. I was too embarrassed to tell him the truth, so I suggested we could photograph some historical buildings for his portfolio. John was really into architecture, so he said sure. I had never lied to a boyfriend before, mainly because I hadn't really had one. But I couldn't help myself when I realized that this just might work. John was surprised when I showed up for the shoot with multiple wardrobe changes and a makeup kit. But I told him we should be in the photos to capture the mood of each site. For every photo of John, there were 25 of me, pretending to focus on the architecture, but really making sure I got a good 3/4 shot. Under the Hope Memorial Bridge, I had him wait to shoot the photo until the wind blew my hair just so. And when I posed in the doorway of St. Peter's Church and looked out pensively over Lake Erie, I made him focus in on my face. I felt guilty. John was so nice and looked like a combination of Harry Connick Jr. and Jason Priestley. How could I deceive someone that cute? I managed. I was scared to go to the casting call by myself. It was at the Renaissance Center in downtown Detroit, which at the time was a wasteland. So I asked John if he wanted to make a road trip to Detroit to eat lunch in Greektown, a neighborhood famous for its restaurants and flaming fried cheese. When we got there, I whipped out the AAA guidebook and casually mentioned that the nearby Renaissance Center was designed by John C. Portman Jr., and it was an important architectural landmark. Wouldn't it be great to see it? John was in. We had to park far away. It was cold and desolate, so we walked fast. As we neared the Renaissance Center, I saw the Model Search America banner hanging from the entrance. It was 30 feet wide and dingy white with faded red letters. There was a tear in the bottom, as if it had been used a lot. Then I saw the gullible moms who came from God knows where, paying their hard-earned money to drag their blank-faced daughters into the slaughter. Some look like Olive Oyl, others John Benet Ramsey. No Christy Turlingtons. I thought of the $500 in my wallet next to my laminated card. John pointed to the sign and laughed. I turned red, ran to the bathroom, sat down on the floor, and cried. I was my grandfather's granddaughter. I had a better chance of winning a Chevy Beretta than getting a modeling job with these shysters and their enormous cheesy banner. Why was I freezing my ass off in downtown Detroit for this? My mother had died of cancer when I was 10. She was just 34. She was the most beautiful person I had ever known inside and out. She had done some modeling in college, and I just wanted to follow in her footsteps in any way I could. But I knew if she could see me now, it would not be pretty. She'd tell me to get my butt off that filthy bathroom floor and out to that cute boy waiting for me. I went outside and told John the whole thing was a ruse to get to Model Search America. He didn't run away. I think that's because we had driven my car. Also, he was hungry and really wanted to eat lunch in Greektown. So did I, and that's what we did next. John had some practical advice. Why not just get a print agent? There's an idea. I found a really good one in Pittsburgh, and my picture ended up on a Metro billboard and an HP printer cartridge. The best part was when my dad called from Office Depot. He had made a midday run for toner. Yeah, and when he picked up the package, there I was on the back of the box. So I can say I had a modeling career, and John stuck around for all of it. We've been together ever since. 23 years later, he's my husband.
Gather round people wherever you roam, and admit that the waters where you have grown, and accept that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If the time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming, or you'll sink like a stone, 'cause the times they are a-changing.
When I was 14 years old, I stopped talking to my dad for 3 years after an argument over Pizza Hut. My family is best described as a poorly written, over-the-top sitcom exploiting Italian-American stereotypes. Set on working-class Long Island, the cliche characters include my dad, a sarcastic, old-school union construction worker, and my smothering, perpetually worried mom, who never got a driver's license, made the sign of the cross whenever she hears ambulance sirens, and suffocated me and my brother with love. We even had a plump 4'11" grandmother who spoke broken English and never left the kitchen. One night, freshman year of high school, Mom suggested we go to Pizza Hut for dinner. I wanted to stay home and watch The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. An argument ensued. Like all teenagers, I hated being treated like a child and desperately wanted independence. How come Pete gets to do what he wants? I protested, referring to my 16-year-old brother who was out for the night. Arguing turned to yelling. Dad came downstairs and ended it. Do what she said and get in the damn car. We loaded into his blue 1976 Plymouth Volare station wagon and headed to Pizza Hut. Sitting in the vinyl back seat alongside Grandma, my anger built. Kids my age were already drinking and having sex, or at least lying about it. I was a straight-A student who never got in trouble, yet I wasn't allowed home alone for 2 hours. It was time to make a stand. We parked, they exited. I'm not going, I declared. Before Mom could disagree, Dad said, good, leave them there. They headed inside for pizza and unlimited salad bar. Alone in the station wagon, I weighed my options. Run inside with my tail between my legs, apologize and enjoy some dinner, or protest and get a little respect. I knew my neurotic mom couldn't help herself. She was scared of the world. If she could, she'd have kept me and my brother in bubbles like the one in that John Travolta movie. In the bubble. But Dad was different. He grew up on the streets of the South Bronx. He knew how important freedom was for teenage boys. He didn't care if I stayed home alone. I resented him for taking the path of least resistance and always siding with Mom. As the warm aroma of pizza wafted through the car, I made an oath to stop talking to him. They returned. I remained silent. Dad sarcastically noted, the Sunshine Boy's not talking. We arrived home. I ate leftovers, headed to my room, and did 100 push-ups. I always knew my dad loved me. He'd do anything for our family. But he was from a generation of men who thought being friends with your kid weakened the father-son relationship. We only communicated through sports. He'd come home from work covered in fiberglass and dried cement to organize neighborhood stickball games in our street. He coached my Little League teams, and he was especially hard on me, nitpicking everything I did wrong. I'd cry in my room after losses, and sometimes after wins. It made me work harder, but it turned my dad into my enemy. In junior high school, I told him I didn't want him coming to my games anymore. He compromised and sat alone behind the outfield fence. The first month of our silence was difficult. Dad was the only licensed driver. I walked a lot. For things like doctor visits and school functions, a system evolved. Mom became the go-between for communication. Tell your son be ready by 4, Dad would say, loud enough for me to hear. Mom usually joined us, but there were times she couldn't, and it was just me and Dad silently riding in the station wagon, the crackle of an AM radio sports show, the only tension breaker. One night I asked Mom to broker a ride to my friend's house to watch the Royal Rumble. How bad does he want to go? Dad asked. He enjoyed testing me. If he wants to sell out, he can ask. It set me off. I'll never sell out to you, I blurted in his direction and stormed out the door, walking 3 miles to watch Hulk Hogan defeat Mr. Perfect. I headed home feeling victorious. Fuck him. The less I needed Dad, the more independent I felt. My next battle was religion. Every Sunday morning, my parents dragged us to church with the enlightened Catholic rationale of, because that's what you do. It was an hour-long torture of sitting, standing, kneeling, and not knowing or caring what the fuck the priest was talking about. I somehow convinced Mom to start allowing me to go alone to evening mass, and instead I'd walk to a nearby drugstore to steal bodybuilding magazines. After being cut from the basketball team, I started lifting weights to get stronger. It became an obsession, a perfect outlet for my anger to literally transform myself into my own man. A year went by. Not talking to my dad became normal. In 10th grade, I was granted more freedom and started hanging out with local knuckleheads. Our weekend social life revolved around packs of kids drinking in the parking lot behind Wallbaum Supermarket. Whoever could be the biggest idiot won. Fights broke out, property got destroyed, girls gave handjobs behind dumpsters. One night, some schmuck lit a car on fire, only to find out it was his best friend's grandmother's car. While I never drank or tried drugs in high school, I would go into wall bombs to steal from my friends, sliding bottles of Zima up the sleeve of my triple fat goose ski jacket. I became a punk. My straight A grades slipped. I was suspended from school for a week after mooning a teacher in the National Geographic Museum during a field trip. That Christmas, I was too cool to appreciate the sweaters Mom bought. Dad snapped, throwing them onto the front lawn and calling me an ungrateful shit. My poor mom pleaded with us to end the silence. We'd both tell her the other one needed to apologize first. She was a secretary in my high school and had teachers pull me aside to talk about the situation. I'd act tough, shrug it off, and bury my emotions in the weight room. One day, my knucklehead friends devised a brilliant robbery scheme. I entered Marshall's, put on sneakers, and walked out. Upon exiting, someone yelled, "Wait!" I assumed my friends were messing with me. Nope, it was a big security guard. He dragged me inside to a room filled with camera monitors and explained my options. I can call your parents. No, I want the other option. Or I call the police and they call your parents. Fuck. I heard Mom's, "What?" on the other end of the phone as the guard explained what happened. My parents arrived. I had to pay a fine and was never allowed inside a Marshall's again. I got released and slumped into the back seat of Dad's station wagon. "If you ever wanted to hurt me, you did," was all he said. Mom, of course, had much more to say, but I only remember how upset she was that I had enough money in my wallet to buy the sneakers. A week later, I broke my ankle playing basketball, introducing me to karma and ending my criminal career. My anger now shifted to proving to my dad how good I could be. I buckled down in the classroom, moving into the top 10 of my class by junior year. Anger-fueled weight room sessions turned the skinny freshman into a 240-pound captain of the football team, getting recruited by dozens of colleges. Senior year, I led my team to a league championship. Dad came to every game. "He's so proud of you," Mom would say privately. I was no longer mad at him. It was now a peaceful Cold War, both sides too stubborn and unwilling to show weakness. I was selected to the all-county football team and invited to a big awards dinner. Since I had no way of obtaining a driver's license, I did like always and arranged for a teammate to drive me and Mom. While we waited, Mom said, "It's breaking your dad's heart that he can't go." 3 years prior, that would have made me happy. Not anymore. I was no longer an insecure kid hell-bent on proving to myself I didn't need anyone. I headed into the living room where Dad sat alone watching TV. I got choked up. "Dad, you want to come tonight?" He stood up and said, "I'll drive." I canceled the ride from my teammate, and then Mom, Dad, and I got in the blue 1976 Plymouth Volare station wagon and headed to the awards dinner. My dad's 79 now. We slowly mended our relationship over the years. There were no apologies, no dramatic hugs. We'll never be best friends. Not all family is, and that's okay. There's an unspoken love and respect only two equally stubborn assholes can understand. I call him on birthdays and Father's Day, and we talk about sports. I bite my tongue when I'm back home and he's watching Bill O'Reilly on Fox News. The topic of not talking in high school came up during an argument a few years ago. He justified it with, "I knew it would make you stronger." I don't agree with my dad's approach, but he did the best he could. He's currently in a fight with his 82-year-old brother. My Uncle Andy, because my uncle wears an Army veteran baseball cap. When a stranger thanked my uncle for his service, Dad interjected, "He only served during peaceful times." Uncle Andy replied, "Go fuck yourself." They haven't spoken in 4 years. Mom and Aunt Liz serve as the go-betweens for communication when they all drive together to family functions in Dad's red 1998 Honda Odyssey minivan. I talked to Dad about it. He's waiting for Uncle Andy to apologize first. Now, I realize how stupid this all sounds, but I do nothing to stop it. That's how family works. And what can I do? Ask them to talk it out over dinner at Pizza Hut?
My love, she speaks like silence, without ideals and violence. Doesn't have to say she's faithful, yet she's true like ice, like fire. People carry roses, make promises by the hour.
I feel I should apologize to Eddie. When he was in high school, I starred in a series of Zima commercials. I will never dance at Callie's wedding. I will not cheer at Tucker's college graduation. I won't meet Mia's children or enjoy a girls' night out with Mary, but I will be expected to mourn them when they shuffle off this mortal coil, because they are the four-legged family members of people I love. Some days, it appears a pet genocide is taking place on my social media feeds. There are not only pictures of adorable antics, but news of the impending demise, precipitous decline, pleas for intercessory prayers, and the inevitable deaths of Copernicus Q. Cutie Pie, Mr. Mugglepuss, and Sir Barks-a-Lot. Their departures will unleash, an outpouring of emotion from their caretakers. I'm bereft. Heart is broken. We've lost our angel. This will be followed by a collective breathing that I am not keen to participate in because I am an unfeeling cad. I can find a depth of feeling for your human family, even if I've never met them, but I have a hard time summoning the same emotion for your fur babies. It wasn't always this way, this sentimentalized relationship with animals. Looking out over the San Gabriel Mountains from my bedroom window, I often contemplate the steeliness of those intrepid souls who cross the plains in covered wagons, most of them accompanied by working dogs. What would these settlers think of a world where you can purchase $500,000 canine compounds equipped with temperature-controlled daybeds? Quick drying doggy nail polish. Or open your home to a pot-bellied pig without bacon on the brain. But what's landed me in the doghouse with many of the folks that I share my life with is that I don't consider animal companions to be family members. They are like family, but they aren't actually family. In the same way that carob, with its dry, lint-like texture, is not even remotely a distant cousin once removed to chocolate. So I resolved to forge friendships with my friends' fur-bound children with the same enthusiasm and sincerity with which I celebrate their human offspring. When I show up at her place, Dinah launches into her list. Fluffy, Daisy, Danny, Stan, Dave, Dusty, Fluffy Muffin, and Fluffer Nutter. It's possible that Fluffer Nutter and Fluffy Muffin are the same cat, but even Dinah's not sure anymore. She tells me that she and her cat Callie have an understanding. We spend hours staring deeply into each other's eyes. I too have lost hours gazing into those mysterious marbles, imagining a connection of sorts. But what does a cat, average human IQ equivalent -25, think about when staring us down? Perhaps it's similar to an experience that I had binge watching The Walking Dead. After 3 episodes, I was certain that I didn't like the show, but I felt compelled to watch the next 5 seasons to find out if Rick makes it out of that town, out of that church, out of that cannibal compound, and out of those pants. With a captive feline, we're the only channel they've got. So there's a good chance they're tuning in to see how long it will take until we stop moving and they can feast on our eyeballs. I suggest a little one-on-one playtime with Callie, and as I dangle the faux mouse on a plastic fishing pole over the edge of the mattress in her bedroom, trying to lure her out, I feel kind of like I'm on To Catch a Predator. And any minute, Chris Hansen is going to emerge from the hallway to arrest me. I didn't even score a pity pet. My friend Gia's terrier, Tucker, appears so frequently on her Instagram account, it seems like the dog's exploits are being documented as a reality TV show. There's Tucker eating dinner. There's Tucker getting groomed. I fully expect one day to see Tucker tossing a glass of white wine in another dog's face. So when I show up at her home in Hollywood, I'm flabbergasted to discover that there is something different about Tucker in person and his public persona, and I can't put my finger on it. I also can't stop myself from inquiring about it. I Photoshop his fur. I make it just a bit whiter. I'm not really sure why, she tells me. And when I confess that he looks cuter in pictures, Gia glares at me like I've suggested her child was ugly. I'm kidding, I assure her as she cuts our visit short. By the time I get home, she's already posted on Instagram that someone has said her dog wasn't as cute in person. And commenters posit that this insensitive infidel should be drawn and quartered. Thank goodness she didn't put my name, or a lynch mob might have gathered outside my home. We're not those people, Glenn exclaims, when I enter the home that he shares with his husband, Mark, and Mr. Mooney, a pug. And I instantly know that not only are they those people, but I've gone upriver. When I see what is unmistakably appears to be 2 containers of ashes on a shelf, one labeled Lorna and the other Doris. Oh, your mother's? No, Doris was Mark's mother, and Lorna was one of our dogs, but she was more maternal than Doris. And I can't say that I'm surprised when Glenn and Mark announce that Mr. Mooney can speak actual words, but it does render me speechless. We lean forward, craning our necks and heads tilting slightly. Hey, you. Hey, you. Slowly and deliberately, Mark speaks, "Hey, you," in the way that you do when teaching children to sound out a new word. See, it's hard. One of the reasons that it's hard for people to accept Darwin's theory of evolution is that it's just difficult to picture the vast amount of time it takes for a species to evolve. Yet so many of us are convinced that we might take part in the first interspecies chit-chat, that you can find videos similar to the scene that we are playing out in Glenn and Mark's house in thousands of videos on the internet. My husband was convinced that our cat could talk for about a month. That was the first occasion that I suggested he might want to consider getting his real estate license. Our cat never spoke, but 6 words formed in my mind. Too much time on his hands. I nod and I smile, but honestly, Mr. Mooney's response sounds a lot like someone gargling water. It would be hard to say if I bonded with Glenn and Mark's dog, but I did feel unmistakably moved by the capacity for love that I witnessed. Could I feel unconditional love for a dog if I wasn't so fond of his owner? I asked the guys. Glenn and Mark tell me that their dogs were adopted from a rescue group called the Brittany Foundation, and they urge me to go and visit. So I've always been a bit dubious of the priorities of animal rescue types. I know these people have only the best intentions when they post on social media. Found an adorable terrier on the corner of Highland and Hollywood Boulevard, no tags. House-trained, love treats, and so sweet, needs a forever home. But just once, I would love to see. Found a homeless vet on the corner of Highland and Hollywood Boulevard. Tags. Not exactly housebroken, but so sweet. Loves meth, needs a forever home. Not only do they have an open house coming up, but there is one volunteer spot in the Brittany Foundation's Spend a Day in Their Paws fundraiser, where volunteers spend an entire day locked in a kennel. Bright Eyes and Simba, my kennel mates, were rescued from a hoarder's apartment along with 200 dogs. It was so crowded they were burrowing in the walls. Not having socialized with humans early enough in their lives, they will never be placed. They've been at the foundation for 14 years. They have big eyes, and Simba's legs bow slightly, and he's got the same kind of arthritis in his joints as me. I am rooting for him as he attempts over and over to jump the 2 inches to reach his camp bed. I reach out to help, but he yelps, recoiling from my touch. With a lot of patience, Yvonne tells me, another volunteer, they might come to you. She's known as the hot dog lady around the joint. When Mr. Bojangles arrived, Yvonne held hot dogs in her hand for 4 hours each Saturday and Sunday for 5 months until he developed enough trust to come out and take them from her. She leaves me alone with the dogs as I reflect on how 4 hours is 3 hours and 55 minutes longer than the amount of time I ever waited for my son as an infant to eat applesauce from my spoon. And I am filled with purpose and the good feeling that comes with being of service. We are doing important work here, and I am ready to go home now. I check my watch. Exactly 29 minutes have passed. Visitors begin arriving and stop by my kennel. They draw close as the dogs, with their wounded fragility, pull at their heartstrings, but most drift off quietly and quickly. Possessed by the desire to make my dogs more popular, I turn into a carnival barker, hitting those headlines hard. Hoarder! 200 dogs can't be adopted! Here for a lifetime! A woman steps close and she fixes me with watery eyes, grabs hold of my hand through the chain link. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I feel like a fraud, and I know what I must do. I've been given a bag of treats for the dogs. I was told that the day after these open houses, the dogs get diarrhea because the sitters often offer them too many snacks. So I will need to be prudent, but I am determined to give Hot Dog Lady a run for her money. I hold a few biscuits out in my hand. Simba edges forward, but I have to drop it on the ground before he'll take it. Bright Eyes doesn't even try. Finally, after an hour, Simba lurches towards me. I'm so excited that I yell out, "Simba ate from my hand!" which sends the dogs cowering into the corner of the kennel. Still, I depart elated but terrified. Is this how it starts? Is a lick the gateway fluid exchange that leads to photoshopping your dog's fur? Next stop, hot dog ladydom. That week, Gia's Tucker dies. The date is November 13th, and as news of the massacre in Paris begins to make its way around the world, one person writes on her Facebook page, "Maybe Tucker died to escort all those souls in Paris to heaven." Hundreds of people are also writing that they're sure that Tucker is waiting for Gia on the Rainbow Bridge. I have lived my entire life unaware of the Rainbow Bridge until this very moment. It's a mythical place described in a popular pet grieving poem. It's the place where pets who have been especially close to someone go when they die. They are happily enjoying all the food they want and playing, but there is one thing missing: us. They wait there to be reunited with us so we can cross over the Rainbow Bridge together. It's hard to make sense of the conundrum that is the Rainbow Bridge. Is there some other place that pets go who we haven't been especially close to? Or do all the pets we've ever had during our entire lifetime wind up there? As a child, I had turtles that smelled funny, and I would be happy to never see them again. What's under the Rainbow Bridge? What if I live until I'm 100? Will I be leaving all of my deceased pets in a state of suspended unhappiness? How selfish of me. I should stop washing my hands. What about Simba and Bright Eyes? They deserve a rainbow fucking causeway. But I know what I must do. Dear Gia, I write, isn't it unbelievable that in this 24/7 news cycle world, we are so overloaded with catastrophes that we've lost the ability to distinguish between the global tragedy of terrorism and the very real, but still minor in comparison, unfortunate death of your dog? No one wants to hear that. I am an insensitive jerk. Dear Gia, I am so glad I had a chance to meet Tucker. I believe that we are so eager to put our best selves into the world that we are sending our pets more lovable versions of ourselves to stand in for us. Our pets have become our avatars. That is the reason why you photoshopped Tucker's fur. And so sorry Tucker is dead. I am now an asshole. Dear Gia, I am so sorry for your loss. It's heartbreaking. I know how hard it will be to carry on without your angel. I am sure he's waiting for you on the Rainbow Bridge.
You got a liner to say you are my friend. When I was down, you just stood there grinning. You've got a lot of nerve to say you got a helping hand.
I was in Dublin in May doing my one-man show at an international gay theater festival. Here's the timeline. One day in December, I was sitting in my office between clients, and I got a tweet from my friend Brian in Dublin. Now, I hadn't spoken to Brian in almost 10 years. Brian and I met in the 90s in Chicago when he was an unknown folk singer opening for Suzanne Vega, and I was a hot young Chicago improviser at the Second City. 17 years or so later, we were still in touch, and Brian came to LA to work on a new album. He was and is a big celebrity in Ireland with gold records and household name status. He had a number of homes and properties he was busy trying to manage with his business manager from across the pond. He began working out in a gym and was in great shape, had shorter but enviably thick hair, and rumor had it he was hung like Rasputin. At the time of his visit, I was being evicted from my apartment, my dog was dying, and he's at the fucking Rainbow Bridge. At the time of his visit, I was being evicted from my apartment, my dog was dying, I was 30 pounds heavier than I am now, I was working at a Polish restaurant with a torn meniscus and had yet to be diagnosed with diabetes. It wasn't a great visit. Things were said, then said again. If, as I'd always said, my feelings for Brian were always like that of a brother to his brother, I had forgotten to take into account that I actually can't stand my brothers. And he speaks to only one of his 12 or 13 other brothers from the Falls Road in Belfast. I'd forgotten to take into account that both of us had been raised by wolves in war zones, with his, of course, being more authentic because there were actual bombs and bullets, mine being much more Americanized and theoretical. I should have remembered that our common first language wasn't connection. Part of the bond that brought us together all those years came from being the gay kid in a treacherous Irish family, in which defenses and armor were the norm and vulnerability the soft spot for the lance to hit home. Parry and thrust were the dance moves of the day, be it 1977 in war-torn Belfast or 1978 in Suicide Land, Orland Park, Illinois. In short, we were both cunts back in 2007. We forgot to be grown-ups and started being brothers again. The visit ended with Brian escaping to someone's house where weeping and sighing weren't the soundtrack, and a curt email from him the next day basically saying, "Hey, it's Brian, please never speak to me again, okay?" Honestly, I had no option but to comply with his request. Being me has taught me a thing or two about forgiveness, the limits of my abilities to make amends for certain words that fly out of my PTSD-riddled Scorpio mouth. I had to chalk my mystical and lovely friendship with Brian up to the list of collateral damages my war on life has created. Cut to last December, my friend and Brian's, the late great Kirsty MacColl, has the greatest Christmas song in the world, Fairy Tale of New York. If you haven't heard of it, don't worry, that just makes you a fucking American. And me, the most Irish person you've ever met. It's cool. Kirsty died in 2000 on holiday with her 2 sons in Mexico. It was awful. She was killed by a boater as she was scuba diving with her boys. This past December, which was the 15th anniversary of her death, I tweeted her now full-grown sons a couple of pictures I had of their mom. Unbeknownst to me, Brian Kennedy saw those tweets and went to my website and watched my one-man show from 2011 in Chicago. And he tweeted me that day in my office, and he said, "Jimmy Doyle, watched your show and laughed my ass off. Hope you're well, XO." I tweeted back, "Brian, I love you. I'm sorry." And that's all it took. 2 messages, well under 140 characters, and the 10 years of estrangement were over. Being more poetic than I, Brian's response to my statement that we were both cunts in 2007 was, "There was a bit of bad weather between us." Potato, potato. So, long story short, I submitted my show to the International Dublin Gay Theatre Festival, IDGTF for short, or as I remember the acronym, I don't give 2 fucks. I rehearsed my show, I even memorized my fucking lines. I flew to Dublin to knock Dublin on its knees with my pithy, sarcastic, yet humble and all too vulnerable art. Brian let me use his name as producer, and I flew out to Ireland for the first time in over 10 years. I thought I was going to Dublin to bring my genius writing and performing to the international stage. I kind of thought I'd get a TV show like the first 20 times I did Sit and Spin. After spending thousands of dollars and flying 5,000 miles and playing to houses of 5 or 12, and one night, I swear to God, there was one woman in the audience. I went to a bathhouse while I was there and sucked a guy off, and I had a bigger audience giving that blowjob than I did at the theater festival. Is what I'm saying is the audiences were small. But I realized something. I flew to Dublin and spent all that money to have dinner on Sunday evening at Brian's. Although we'd made our peace through the tweets, Brian and I, a few private messages and a phone call before I left, I still didn't know what it would be like to be together again. Would our history of all those years of friendship and the decade of estrangement leave a wound that couldn't be healed? Would old resentments, freshly put to bed, rise up and leave me homeless? I brought the emergency credit card just in case. I arrived on Saturday evening and stayed at a gay B&B in the Barbara Streisand suite. I had my put-in rehearsal at the Pierce Center, home of Irish hero of independence, Pádraig Pierce. I grabbed a cab and headed to Brian's in Kilmainham, where he is hosting a dinner party for his brother's birthday. I arrived at the front door and was greeted by Deirdre, a friend of Brian's. I came in with all my shit, all my luggage, all my bags, and my carton of duty-free silk-cut cigarettes, and I saw Brian. The hippie vegan bisexual I'd met in 1990 is now a big old buff muscle queen with shorter but still striking hair. He looked at me and I at him, and he said 2 words: Jimmy Doyle. We hugged each other, introductions were made. Somebody else came to the door. I brought my stuff up to my room, splashed some cold water on my jet-lagged face, and went down to the kitchen. Deirdre's sister Ann had made some sort of curried prawns, which I declined. Shrimp freaked me the fuck out, actually. But I was polite. I had some sparkling water because I'm sober. Everybody else was having wine and cocktails. I lit up a cigarette out in his garden just off the kitchen, and Deirdre came and sat next to me, telling me in her Brenda Vaccaro voice that she was thrilled not to be the only one having a fag at this party. I met Brian's brother Stuart, who lives in Belfast and works as a therapist, and his gorgeous young girlfriend who works in Belfast with autistic kids. I met Mary, who smokes hash out of a little corncob pipe like Granny in those old movies with the outlaw children. And her brother Richard was there, but he was an operatic tenor and insurance salesman. People there worked in television, in Irish language documentaries. Some of them were first Irish speakers before they spoke English. Wine was flowing. I switched to coffee because suddenly I was aware that I was sitting in the garden eating salad and steaks with my Irish tribe. There was even a foil for me, a skinny little queen called Niall, who I immediately sensed was trying to snip at my heels, vying for his unrequited love to be returned by Brian. Niall's the kind of person you hear about before he comes to the party. Look, he's great crack, really, but he should never drink red wine. Is he off the wine again? I heard he was off the wine. He should never drink red wine. Niall was not off the wine that Sunday, and he asked me questions that would have unsettled the old insecure me about my failed acting career and why I worked with addicts and why I couldn't have just one drink. Towards the end of the night, when he'd gone from white wine to red wine to gin, after he broke a wine glass and his former rent boy Thai husband arrived, he leaned in sloppily to me across the table. Is your husband fat? The unsaid also hung in the air between us, but it only made me smirk to myself, thanks be to God. Yes, I said. He's huge. And throughout the night, as we sang and laughed and ate, I looked across the table from time to time, watching the former bisexual vegan hippie I'd met so long ago snarf down his steak as we made jokes about cocks and arses and all the things a good dinner party should include. Our eyes met, mine and Brian's, and we smiled like old war buddies at a reunion. I don't have that many gay friends, really. The brothers I do have, I don't really talk to. So it was worth the money and the travel and the schlepping to find out that I have a brother again. Literally one of the only gay men on the planet I haven't at least offered a blowjob. And we were here and we were happy, and there was plenty of food, plenty of joy, and plenty of success for everyone.
Okay, so you could tell that I was doing Bob Dylan songs. And I'd like to do one of my songs now, sort of ridiculous now after that. But I wanted to dedicate this actually to Maggie and Jim. How long have you guys been married?
15 years.
15 years.
15?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is a serious song, but anyway, this is for you guys.
In a row.
What?
In a row.
In a- There's a mirror on the bookcase in the hallway by the stairs. She always steals a look when she walks by. She stops to clean her glasses, shakes her head and heaves a sigh. She can't believe the lines around her eyes. Her husband's in the den, but he can hear her. He comes out and steps between her and the mirror, saying, "Let me be your looking glass, look at me. When you walk past and see yourself the way I do. I don't see young, I don't see old, I just see you." He takes a walk out to the driveway with a bucket and a sponge. He's finally gonna wash her Cherokee. He takes his shirt off as he passes the window on the driver's side and sees a belly where a six-pack used to be. He laughs, but she knows how it upsets him. She comes out and steps between him and his reflection, saying, "Let me be your looking glass, look at me. When you walk past, see yourself the way I do. I don't see young, I don't see old, I just see you." On days when it feels like the mirror doesn't love you, remember I do. And let me be your looking glass, look at me. When you walk past and see yourself don't see old, I just see you. I don't see young, I don't see old, I just see you.